Wanted to ask a little bit about your most recent research on fathers and co-parenting and children. Could you lay out an overview of what you and your colleagues were looking at, what hypotheses you might have had and what you were looking to find?
We were looking at why changes in family composition, so when parents break up, when parents repartner, that type of change, why that's associated with problem behaviors for children. So we tend to see a lot of externalizing behaviors, things like aggression, hyperactivity, hitting, biting, beyond the toddler years when that's pretty normative, when kids are experiencing this instability and change in their family. And we wanted to know why that is, why that's so stressful for children. It might kind of seem obvious, but no one had really looked at that. So we explored what changes within the family when parents break up, specifically focusing on father involvement and co-parenting. And we found, we hypothesized that when parents broke up, they would have more difficulty maintaining a civil or supportive co-parenting relationship, and that father involvement might decline. For one reason or another, the father's no longer there, maybe the mother-father relationship is strained, so the mom is preventing the father from being involved in some way. And what we found actually was that the co-parenting relationship mattered more for explaining children's behaviors than the father relationship. There's a lot that I could say about that I won't go into, but essentially we found that when parents break up, and especially when mothers repartner, it puts a strain on the co-parenting relationship. It's not as supportive, and that's why children are acting out.
Can you tell me a little bit about the methods that you used? How did you come to these findings?
We used data from the Fragile Family. Our sample was roughly 1,500 children, and they were living with their mothers when we were looking at these analyses. So we looked at mothers' change in partnerships and romantic partnerships.
As part of this, Liz, did you and your colleagues also conduct any interviews, or was this mostly the research from the surveys and from the initial study?
Yeah, so we used data that other researchers collected through interviews. So the Columbia and Princeton researchers interviewed these families, mothers, fathers, at times children, although we didn't use that data. And then we were able to receive their data set and analyze it.
What did the findings suggest?
They suggest the importance of the co-parenting relationship. There's a lot of programmatic effort and research around father involvement, which we know is important, but our findings also suggest that perhaps the co-parenting relationship is more important for children's well-being when they're facing this instability. So making sure that moms and dads can come together as co-parents and be supportive of each other, put on a united front, and make sure that they're being civil for the sake of their child as much as they can be.
That new romantic partnership, in what ways does that impact the children?
We didn't look specifically at what a stepfather, for instance, or a new cohabiting partner, their relationship with the child specifically, or even their relationship with the mother. But what we found, and this has been the case in past research too, is that when a new partner moves into the home, it's worse for the kids' outcomes, in part because it makes the co-parenting relationship with the biological father worse. So it looks like when there's a breakup between mom and dad, obviously that's stressful, and the co-parenting relationship is likely to get worse for a little bit. But it gets even worse when you introduce a new partner who might be, the mom might have conflicting priorities. She's trying to keep her partner happy. The partner's living with the child. It's just hard to include the dad, or maybe hard to support the dad if that makes the partner feel threatened in some way.
Do you have any suggestions for families as they transition through all of this change?
We couldn't look at this specifically in our research, but it suggests to me that to really focus on recognizing that the father is always going to be the biological father, and doing whatever you can to be openly communicative with him, to make sure that your child sees that you are trying in every way to support each other. And if that means, venting to friends or not having a good relationship in other ways, that's completely fine. It's your relationship to the child, like as a parental child triangle, that really matters for kids.
Do you have any other suggestions? How about for the fathers?
I know from our other research, from these findings, from friends, anecdotally, that this can be particularly difficult for fathers. There's other research out there about how moms can sometimes what we call gatekeep. So not only moms tend to be the primary caregiver in the sense that when there's a breakup, the kids tend to stay with moms, although that's changing somewhat. And that can be hard for the dads. The moms have a lot of legal and kind of physical control over the child and whether or not the dad sees them. And that puts the dad in a position of feeling maybe second class. And so I would just say, find friends that you can vent to. Really try your hardest to keep at it, to keep asking the mom to be supportive and to let you do things, and to be as involved with your child as you want to be. And with time, I think that families often find that it gets better, that it can be raw when there's a recent breakup or a new repartnering, but sticking with it will be beneficial for the children.
How important is it for parents not to air their problems and concerns in front of their kids?
I guess our research can't specifically speak to that either, but I would say very important. It shows incredible undermining of the other parent when parents do that, and it can feel really good as a parent. I know that it can just be so cathartic to say something about someone who's frustrating you, and then you feel better, but your child will remember that, and they'll start to internalize that about their parent, the other parent, or feel like they can't come to you to ask to, see the dad, for instance, on a weekend, or if there's a problem, they don't want to create more conflict, and they might not come to either parent about that. So it can just create a lot of stress for children.
In terms of improved behavior, if that relationship between the two parents, the co-parenting relationship, improved, did behavior also improve in the sample that you looked at?
We didn't look at improvement over time, but we did see that when parents were breaking up, if their co-parenting relationship was better, was more supportive and more openly communicative, their kids were doing better socially. So it really does suggest that kids are not faring well in a case of a breakup because of a decline in co-parenting support, which suggests that if you can improve it, kids will do better socially.
What are the implications for this research?
The biggest implication in my mind is for fatherhood programs. So they are absolutely targeting co-parenting support, but this just underlines how incredibly important it is in addition to their other priority areas. So a father can be getting help with employment and with his relationship with his child, but if he's not learning effective communication strategies with the child's mother, it might really undermine those other efforts.
Next steps for your research. Is there anything else that you and your colleagues feel is a logical next step for you?
We would love to look at this or have someone else look at this with other developmental domains. So the kids in our study are just about to enter kindergarten. I study social development, and I think that that's so important, but it's important to know kind of the broad range of outcomes that these children are showing. So why we might care beyond social development. Does it matter for school readiness or other cognitive outcomes that people might be interested in? Self-regulation, there's a lot on the importance of the father-child relationship for children's self-regulation. And I guess the effects of chaos and stress on children's self-regulation. I think it's important too to be able to look at other aspects of the family system, so what else might be going on in the family when parents are breaking up and why that's linked with with children's social development. I would also love to be able to explore the father involvement piece a little bit more. This data, there's a lot of missing data from the fathers. The data set is fantastic and they follow the families longitudinally, but especially when parents are breaking up, sometimes it can be hard to get access to the father when he's no longer living with the child. So the fact that we didn't find support for a decline in father involvement doesn't necessarily mean that that's not something that's going on. It could be that the fathers who are still in the study are highly involved, or there's something else going on that the survey can't address because it was a survey and not qualitative interviews with the fathers. So I think that that's an important piece to keep probing.
Do you have a third or fourth suggestion from your research or from your experience that you could give to people, good ways to improve this relationship or keep it civil for the kids' benefit?
We do a lot of work with fatherhood programs, and they kind of implement these healthy relationship communication type curricula with their fathers. And one of the things that they always recommend is just take a breath. Before, if you're mad and you're going to say something that you're going to regret, or you're going to say something that's going to just perpetuate the fighting or escalate to a fight, take a breath. And that's okay. You can say, I need a minute to walk around the block, or I'm going to go outside and call my friend or get a drink of water or whatever, and we can continue this conversation later. And that takes practice, because on the receiving end of that, that might make someone mad at first, but learning that calming down and then having the conversation can be a really effective way for you to be better heard, for you to get where you want to go easier. So another recommendation that comes from this is to include mothers in this type of programming, because people put a lot of emphasis on the fathers. It's the father's responsibility to do this programming and to try to learn effective communication skills and all this, which is true. They're one half of the parental unit, but it's only as effective as the mother's willingness to hear them and to also change their communication skills. So it's really important that mothers and fathers take a second to calm down. If they're not going to calm down, perhaps seek help in learning effective communication strategies, because it's both the mother's and the father's responsibility to parent their child, and they need to figure out a way that they can live with doing that together indefinitely.
I'm going to start by asking you a little bit about your background, where you got your undergraduate degree, master's, advanced degrees.
I went to William & Mary for undergrad. And then I went on to University of Chicago for a master's degree and the University of Maryland for a PhD.
What is your area of expertise?
So my degrees are in psychology and human development, and I've been studying family structure and parenting and how that relates to children's social development in the early years, kind of progressively getting more and more specific to focus on family structure, fatherhood, and social development.